Welcome to the Two Gurus Top Compliance podcast with me, Kristy Grant-Hart. I'm here with the one and only Tom Fox. This week, we're covering a truly bonkers sanction case, AI versus AI in creating fraudulent receipts, then trying to suss them out, the likelihood of a new anti-forced labor law in the UK, and a Florida man with a foot fetish trying to run over a foot model. But Tom, how has your week been, and what do you think is the most interesting development?
I am writing a book on the July 4th flood. And so to garner an extra 3 hours a day, I get up at 4 now and write from 4 to 7. So
That's awful. That's awful.
I went from working 12 hours a day to something more.
Your boss is horrible.
He is, but I'm not traveling.
Okay, fair. Yes, I will be all over the world in the next 8 weeks. If you can't find me, you're not looking because I'm everywhere. Okay, Tom, where do you want to start?
I want to start with our good friends AI and the AI creation of fake receipts. And remember when we talked about could AI take your compliance test for you?
Yep.
To me, the story is along these lines for the following reason. When was the first cheating on a test? The first time we had tests. When was the first cheating on expense accounts? The first time we had expense accounts. Guess what? This has been going on forever. And it's just more sophisticated now. And we've had FCPA enforcement actions, two immediately come to mind, Eli Lilly and GSK in China, where in both situations, the Chinese business unit created falsified expenses to defraud the corporate office out of money to create a pot to pay a bribe. So this is not new. It's just a little more sophisticated, and it's something that you're going to have to watch for. In fact, when the GSK scandal hit, there was a website called Get a Receipt that you could upload the logo of the place you wanted to get a receipt from, and you get a real receipt. This has been going on forever. And yeah, it's more sophisticated, maybe harder to detect, and may require more controls to determine the AI-ness of the receipts. But it seems to me this is just on the spectrum of cheating on your expense accounts. And if you've got people who cheat on your expense accounts, I think that paper expense receipts is the least of your problem. It's like those who might cheat on your compliance, the test after you take your annual compliance class. If people are cheating on that, I think the problem is not that they can do it, it's that they are. But I wanted to highlight this.
Look, Tom, the article itself talked about the fake receipt creation, but what I found interesting about it was this AI versus AI. Because, of course, now the expense systems, including the one used by Diligent, my company, is AI enabled. And so what they are trying to do is essentially have AI fake receipts found by AI looking for fake receipts. And so it's just it's the battle of the AI, and I think it's just going to ratchet up and ratchet up. But I enjoyed that AI versus AI conversation. I thought it was fun for you to highlight that.
You're probably too young to remember this, but in Mad Magazine, they used to have a duo called Spy versus Spy. And they would take turns blowing each other up and it was a black spy and a white spy. And this just seemed to me to be Spy versus Spy for those old enough to remember Mad Magazine.
Some things never change, including really poor decision making. So let's go to this fun sanctions case. So our friend Matt Kelly, hi Matt, at the Radical Compliance blog wrote something titled Fratch Pays $1.6 million on Bonkers Sanctions Case. And he's right, Tom. This one was, in fact, kind of bonkers. So it all starts when one of the vice presidents of the freight forwarding company, Fratch, got a rush order to ship a large number of car parts from Mexico to Argentina. So the VP contacted a broker he'd met at an industry conference who was, in fact, able to connect Fratch with a company to fulfill the order. Great, right? Not so much. It was moving so fast, so of course they skipped the standard sanctions screening. And that was a problem because the contract listed the air carrier's name correctly, which was a subsidiary of the Venezuela National Airline, which is on the OFAC sanctions entities list. But wait, there's more. The address listed on the contract was in Venezuela. The exact number of the aircraft was identified as a Venezuelan aircraft, and the itinerary included a stopover in, you guessed it, Venezuela. And we aren't done yet. Next, the Venezuelan airline subcontracted the operation of the flight to Mahan Air, which is an Iranian airline, complete with Iranian crew. Also, FYI, sanctioned by OFAC. So, at this point, everyone knew they were in serious trouble, so Fratch self-reported to OFAC and cleaned up its act. So, Tom, this is one of those where the company did have a sanctions screening program, but it was roundly ignored, and the transaction went through anyway. There's no visibility regarding subcontractors or even if the contract said anything about them. Honestly, this is one where if you used it as a hypothetical during training, people would not believe that it was real. What did you think about this? What's the big takeaway from this crazy case?
So actually, I think there are some big takeaways, but I want to start with anytime there's a rush, that's a red flag. And Matt sussed out, I'm not sure he had it in his blog post, but I think he had sussed out that this request came in on a Friday afternoon, as in we needed Monday. Now, I know you've been in the corporate world, and I have as well. And when you get a Friday afternoon request, it can be one of two things. It can be a senior exec who wants it done, and that means you got to spend the weekend doing it. But it can also be a nefarious attempt to skirt the rules because of alleged need for speed. And so I really like this for that reason as a great example to remind every business operations person and compliance person, if something comes in and you need it immediately, that's a huge red flag. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Doesn't mean it's nefarious. It may be high profitability because the need is so great and what you need to do. And if you have to spend the weekend doing your background due diligence to make sure it's clean, do it. But if something comes in on Friday afternoon and says we need it Monday, you need to be looking out your office window at your red flags at full mast.
All righty. Speaking of problematic company behavior, Tom, what do you want to go to next?
I want to go to and I put two articles in for this one. It's the dismissal of the now former Nestlé CEO, whose name I'm going to completely butcher, not his first name, but his last name. First name Laurent, last name, I think, Friix. But as I said, I may have butchered that. He had an undisclosed relationship with a direct report. It doesn't get any worse than that. He didn't disclose it, should have been terminated. End of story, end of question, but not quite. And it's the not quite part that I really wanted to explore with you, Kristy. The not quite part is there was not one, but two whistleblowers on this. There was not one, but there were two requests for the board to look at this. They didn't do anything because they just went to the CEO and said, hey, you doing her? And he said, nah, it's all rumor, just good friends. And they took that answer and somehow, and then a second whistleblower report, it's not clear if there were two whistleblowers, but a second whistleblower report brought forward enough documentary evidence that the board actually acted. They hired outside counsel, they did an investigation, and they terminated the now former CEO. And that came out after the initial report of the termination. But I wanted to use that part of this case to really emphasize several different things. One, every whistleblower report has to be taken seriously, and you have to do a serious investigation. Ronnie Feldman continually reminds us there are no difficult conversations. There are conversations about difficult topics. And sitting somebody down and saying, are you having an affair, is a difficult topic. Believe me, I know. But that's the kind of conversation you have to have, and you have to have credible, independent counsel to do that. And the board got really lucky here because if that second whistleblower report hadn't come through, they could have completely missed this. It would have subjected them to, in my mind, a clear Caremark claim, or much worse, when it came out later and it turned out they did nothing. There's a huge lesson here for the board that when a level of report like this comes in, it has to be taken seriously. There has to be a significant or serious investigation. I think the last time we were together, we talked about, does the CEO have a private life? And we're on another podcast, sorry. But we don't need to revisit that or here, because for me, the lesson is the board and the missteps the board made. And this has to be taken seriously at the very highest levels.
Yeah, I think when it first came out, it was like, wow, this is great. That it's not great that someone had an affair and lied about it and then got fired. It's great that there was a serious response to a serious problem. But ultimately, the second article kind of blew my mind that they had all these reports that they hadn't acted on, or that both people said, nope, wasn't me, and that was fine. But I think that eventually they did the right thing, which I suppose is the good outcome. But this one's very interesting. I think that there hasn't been enough attention paid to the whistleblower elements of it. So I appreciate you bringing it to the attention, Tom.
All right. What do you got for us?
So my next article comes from my alma mater, Gibson Dunn. Shout out to Gibson as always. It's titled UK Joint Committee on Human Rights publishes report on forced labor, making recommendations for new legislation, which we always find exciting here at the Two Gurus.
You're such a geek.
Have I ever pretended to be otherwise?
No.
The committee performed a 6-month inquiry during which it went to business, industry, and government to ask about the situation in the UK regarding forced labor. And unsurprisingly, what it found wasn't pretty. The UK Moderated Slavery Act of 2015 was a really big deal. It was the first of its kind to require an annual statement from most medium and large companies selling into or out of the UK to be transparent about what they were doing to prevent modern slavery. The problem was and is that there is no good enforcement mechanism, even if companies publish a statement saying, we're doing nothing and don't care. The UK is looking to change that. So the committee made recommendations to follow either the EU-style Forced Labor Act coming into place soon, which would ban all goods suspect of being made with forced labor from coming into the EU, or going with a more American-style law focusing on regions and industries. The recommendation is to create a new right to bring a civil liability claim, yes, that's always important too, against those responsible for forced labor violations. And even tougher, the companies would have the burden of demonstrating that they did take measures to prevent forced labor in their supply chain. So it remains to be seen whether the UK government will take action on the committee's recommendation, which of course means that, Tom, it is crystal ball time. Does the UK go down this route? And if so, how far? What do you think?
Based upon the Joint Committee's report, I think the answer is yes, they do. Maybe the more important question is how far, but I was impressed by the thought they put into this. They clearly see this as an issue that the United Kingdom needs to address, and the push towards human rights is, in my mind, always a good.
I think I agree with you. I think that they will go this route, especially because so much of the UK legislation that Europe has in place is just mirrored. And I think this is going to be the case as well. So let's see what happens. Let's go to the opposite of that and talk about Texas. What's going on there, Tom?
The great state of Texas. Actually, this is about our good friends at Boeing. And it's the continuing saga of the DPA, NPA, or other that the United States is trying to get Boeing and the court to agree to. So to recap, under the Biden administration, Boeing had agreed to a DPA and a corporate monitor. The judge rejected the DOJ's criteria for monitor selection. We had a change in administration. The new administration revised their view of Boeing's culpability and agreed to an NPA with no corporate monitor. That was put before the court, and the court asked for additional briefing and a hearing, and now has asked for additional information from the Department of Justice. So at this point, there's no resolution of the Boeing case, and this is the outgrowth of the 737 MAX crashes. This is the outgrowth was when the Alaskan airline door blew out in midair, and the former administration said that Boeing had violated the original DPA. Typically, a court has zero jurisdiction to accept or not accept a NPA or even a DPA. But here we have the anomaly of victims' rights and victim rights advocacy law, and the victims here are the families of the families of the Boeing crash victims, who have said Boeing is still not in compliance and we want some type of oversight to make sure this never happens again. That's the public interest that I think the court is pointing towards, and they're going to give the court's given the Department of Justice, not Boeing, every opportunity to put in writing of why no monitor and only a monetary penalty, an increase in monetary penalty, is in the public's interest here. I think the court recognizes the difficult position it may be in, yet if the Department of Justice does not come back with significant discussion points of how the public is protected by no monitor, we could see a special master or something else from the court in this matter, and that's where I think we're heading.
That's interesting. I think this case is screaming for a monitor. There is no real oversight or requirements for reports on how the company is doing without one. They're saying they can hire a consultant, that the FTC can come in, or whichever the regulator is there can come in and look anytime they want, so they'll be under scrutiny. I really think that a monitorship is appropriate here, but do you think that they're going to end up with one? This is your crystal ball moment here, Tom. What do you think?
I think the court's going to come up with a creative solution. It will look and feel like a monitor. It may be called a special master. It may be called something else. And it may be someone or a group of people who report to the court directly on their view of how Boeing is meeting its obligations under whatever the settlement agreement is. And that's what the monitor/special master or other would do, is assess whether Boeing has met its obligations under the settlement agreement.
Yeah. Okay. We shall see. Let's go and talk about some bosses and what they're mad about. Shall we do that, Tom? This is from the Wall Street Journal, and it's provocatively titled, "The Boss Has Had It with All the Office Activists." So the opening notes that Microsoft, Google, and Tesla have all been firing employees who have disrupted the office over political debates and anger over positions taken by the company. The article then notes that non-political debate is also causing consternation, as we covered here at the Two Gurus. The article spoke about JP Morgan's restricting the dialogue after an influx of employee complaints about the new return to office mandate. So yes, long gone are the days of encouraging employees to bring their whole selves to work. Instead, companies are moving to a new normal, which the Wall Street Journal described as, quote, a more adversarial employer-employee dynamic in which bosses are far less concerned with accommodating their workers' political and personal views, unquote. Why the big change? First of all, political debate at work is highly disruptive and causes acrimony on teams. And there's always the threat of your company getting in President Trump's crosshairs for political statements or discussions. So the article ends with a consultant stating that now bosses are more likely to take a 1950s approach to working and sharing opinions than bringing your whole self to work. So Tom, I know we've chatted about this before, including just how much I loathe the idea of bringing one's whole self to work. Personally, I believe that even in my own case, there is an appropriate for work person, and that person is different than the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas version of a person. But honestly, I don't think the political debate belongs at work. No one is going to change someone else's mind. Where do you fall out on this, Tom?
I completely agree with you. I would characterize it more in a First Amendment right, whereas you might, and I would think back to the 60s where deans or college presidents' offices had students in those offices and blockaded those offices where the officers couldn't get to their offices. That's not true in the corporate world. No First Amendment right in the corporate world. I don't have any sympathy for employees who do this and get fired. If a company wants to do that, that's the company's right. It may sound harsh, may sound legalistic, but at the end of the day, I'm a lawyer, not a civilian. So I come down on the side of what's the law say. And so I'm very comfortable with that. But I absolutely agree with what you just said. You should have a work personality, and your professional life should be dealt with in a professional manner. And I think you are audited, graded, judged on that your entire professional life. It doesn't mean you can't make a misstep or a mistake. We all do because we're human. But it's important to be professional, and that includes not taking over your boss's office to protest a particular contract you may have with someone who's on the other side of the political fence than you.
Speaking of that exact same issue, I'm sure people would go both ways on this one too, Tom. Which one do you want to talk about next?
I've got the French data privacy fine and penalty against Google and Shein of a record $553 million over cookies. And why I think this is important is this is not Europeans pounding Americans. This is American companies who went to Europe and said, I don't need no stinking rules. They don't apply to me. I'm Google. Well, guess what? There are rules over there. We might not like them. We may think they're over-regulating us. We may find them restrictive, but this is cookies. Everybody knows cookies bad, chocolate chips good. So really, and now we've got the president saying, if you're going to fine our companies for you enforcing your laws, we're going to have to redo our trade deal. No. How about not going over there and not violating the EU law?
Now, to be fair, it was also Chinese, right? Shein is a Chinese company, so it's not just against Google. Look, the CNIL, which is the data privacy authority in France, has always been very conservative and has taken a lot of heat for the strict way that it interprets the privacy laws. But honestly, looking at the facts of this, it seems pretty legit. So I understand why they did what they did, and hopefully we will get some movement for people doing the right thing when it comes to cookies and tracking. Let's see.
Just think about, I would ask you to think about, if you go to an overseas or EU governed website, the options you have around cookies as opposed to an American company. Overseas, you have the option accept, reject. In America, you have accept or other. And you have no clue how to reject the cookies. And that's what American companies have taken to the EU, and the EU says no. It's clear. Full disclosure, full transparency, and ease of ability to accept or reject cookies.
Absolutely. And I personally never want to reject cookies, so I understand why they feel that way. Which is why the next article is all about corporate wellness, specifically corporate wellness and companies giving cool perks to their employees. So Fast Company chose 20 companies across 10 industries to laud for having particularly great innovations in wellness that support their employees' physical and mental well-being. And the reason I chose this article, Tom, was because the big office perks have been eulogized as dead and a thing of the past, but some companies continue not to just offer perks, but to create new and innovative ways of distributing them. Among my favorite innovations are some of the following. Aflac provides early screening for cancer and has no-cost mobile on-site and virtual clinic visits so everyone can access care. Land O'Lakes allows factory workers to participate in creating their own schedules. I kind of love that one, to help them maintain work-life balance and assist in child and elder care more easily. And the technology company Pattern has yoga classes, food truck visits, and massage Mondays. So that one could even be worth moving to Utah for. Not every company's commitment came across as genuine. You can call me a cynic because sometimes I am. In the law and consulting category, one of the big law firms and one of the big four firms said that they are holistically personalizing health for their employees. This reminded me of one of my friends in big law who got free on-site dry cleaning. And this was supposed to be a great perk, but of course it was really only there so people could stay overnight in their offices for days on end, getting their clothes back. So anyway, aside from that, Tom, do you think that wellness plans and perks are back, or are these companies the outliers?
I guess my first question is, will Spark Consulting / Diligent move to Massage Monday?
I'm going to advocate for it, man. I'm in.
You're in. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having perks and wellness perks. I think back to the 90s when people got perks for quitting smoking. And did the company have a financial interest? Absolutely, because they were able to take their insurance rates down. And hopefully their employees would be healthier longer. But some of these other perks, are you gonna do that, or are you gonna do ping pong, or are you gonna play foosball? I'm gonna sit at my desk and beaver away. So just don't bother me.
But you would like free cookies, right? That would be
I'll go with free cookies. I could do that.
Free cookies. All right. Where are you going now, Tom?
So our final story from Tommy is sadly about Mickey. and here, Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney has agreed to pay $10 million to settle FTC allegations that the company unlawfully allowed personal data to be collected from children who view the kid-directed videos on YouTube without notifying their parents, and Disney did not notify their parents or obtain their consent. This is a huge no-no. That should have been something that Mickey and team knew not to do. I'm disappointed it was Disney, but hey, they're a corporation. Interestingly, we just closed our legislative session in Texas, and there was a lot of legislation around cookies, AI, tech, and specifically around what you could and couldn't do with children's data. So I think lawmakers are recognizing this is a more important field and are beginning to take steps, even if Texas is going to ban it. Something's up.
Yeah, California's had laws against this for a good long time. And the amount of the settlement kind of tells me that there probably wasn't specific harm or really bad things happening, thank goodness. But this is definitely one for the avoid reputational damage category. So definitely need to make sure you're double checking if you have anything that is being sold to children. All right, shall we finish off this festival of compliance by heading down to Florida?
Yes.
This time our Florida man is named El Monse Circle, and man, oh man, does this dude love feet. Our Florida story starts on a dating app called Seeking. I asked ChatGPT what Seeking was about. Seeking used to be called Seeking Arrangements, but has since changed its tune from a prostitution sugar daddy type site to one focusing on luxury dating and unconventional arrangements. This emphasis may be why our Florida foot fetish man found himself a foot model on the site. Mr. Circle was looking for his soulmate. He met up with the foot model at a swanky hotel for their date. It started well, but then Mr. Circle asked to smell her feet. When the model refused, Mr. Circle asked to buy her used sneakers. After all, he was sniffing around for love. The foot model offered them to him for a cool $1,000, but Mr. Circle wasn't having it. He left the hotel and got into his red Mercedes. As the model walked out, he passed her, did a three-point turn, and attempted to run her over with his car. Luckily, she had only relatively minor injuries with no damage to her expensive toes. What happened to Mr. Circle? He was caught when he booked another hotel room at the same hotel. Well done, sir. He's now been charged with aggravated battery. So say what you will, Tom, about this Florida man, but he did, in fact, sweep her off her feet. Literally.
I'm beginning to wonder about the IQ of Florida man.
I don't wonder about it at all. Thank you for joining us on the Two Gurus Talk Compliance. I'm Kristy Grant-Hart.
And I'm Tom Fox. Hopefully you'll join us again next time. All right.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet. Every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network, available wherever you listen to podcasts.